Welcome all to our first webinar here on the Hackathon-led growth webinar series. Today's webinar is on accelerating Gen AI training through Capgemini's global AWS Gen AI Hackathon. So we're joined today by a few special guests that we worked with on our recent hackathon. And I'm going to pass now to Victor, who is a CEO and co-founder at Onova, to talk us through this notion of hackathon-led growth.
Right. Welcome, everyone. It's great to have you here. It's great to have our special guests who we're going to be hearing from today. Just a quick, brief intro and background on Onova, if you're not familiar. We are an innovation consultancy, and what we're really trying to pioneer is this concept of hackathon-led growth, where hackathons really no longer just coding competitions or employee engagement exercises, but really driving significant growth, especially in the Gen AI era. We're seeing that today with some of these hackathon collaborations that we're doing with our partners like Capgemini and AWS, and really focused on driving significant time to value. So going from zero to use case to end solution, showing something tangible to your end customers and your clients for enterprise AI adoption. So we'll dive more into that and what that all means for us and the results we've seen so far. As part of hackathon-led growth, we've got many partners that we will typically work with, and this is what we are calling the Gen AI stack. So we're seeing that enterprises will need to leverage many layers of this Gen AI stack in order to take full advantage of AI. So you've got the infrastructure layer, which is the core cloud resources and compute resources to run your models and your solutions and your apps. You've got the model layer, which are your actual large language models, which also typically these infrastructure companies will have their own models. The application layer, which is end user applications that your consumers or employees may be using to actually interact with these solutions. And then, of course, you've got the implementation layer, which is the companies that will actually help implement, maintain, and build these solutions within your company. So this is the Gen AI stack, and we see kind of like leveraging partners across this whole stack as one of the best ways really to take full advantage of AI. So that's why I'm really excited today, specifically because we've got a few members that we've partnered with on this stack and really coming off the success of a hackathon that we just recently did. And so just some quick stats, but we'll go more into really peeling behind the scenes. But we ran a very large internal Gen AI hackathon, had 170 teams, over 1,600 registered hackers, almost 50 or so mentors and judges involved with participants across 41 countries, and then about 62 teams and submissions that made it to the finish line. And this drove significant momentum from both a training and upskilling perspective, but also business ROI. But really, this is where I kind of want to pass to our partners, and we'll be digging into a bit more on kind of behind the scenes where from their perspectives on this whole hackathon. So I am really excited to introduce the three guests that we have invited here today between AWS and Capgemini. And I'm just going to quickly pass to each of them for a quick introduction and then also to share their role in the hackathon. So we'll start with Genevieve.
Hi everyone, I'm Genevieve Chamard and I look after the AWS Capgemini partnership globally on the Capgemini side. My role during this hackathon was to actually sponsor and drive it overall for Capgemini.
Thanks, Genevieve. I will pass to Venki.
Hello, everyone. This is Venki Osur. I'm a senior partner solution architect in AWS. My role for this hackathon is to support the workshops, enable the resources on the technical generative AI technologies within AWS.
Fantastic. Thanks, Venki. And last but not least, Nico.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Victor. My name is Nico. I'm same as Venki. I'm a senior partner at SA, and I'm working closely with Capgemini for the last almost 4 years. And during the hackathon, my main responsibility was mentoring the participants and also was having AWS office hours, which basically sessions for participants to ask questions, technical, and get their feedback on what they're doing and get help from us.
Fantastic. Thanks, Nico. All right. So with that, with the introduction of our guests, I'm going to pass to Ron and we'll jump into some of our questions and diving into the success of the hackathon.
Nice. So one of my first questions, so before on one of the slides, we showed kind of the results and the big numbers of the hackathon, but I wanted to ask Genevieve first, what were some of your broader goals from Capgemini's perspective for this particular hackathon?
Yeah, exactly, Ron. Beyond the numbers and the very good numbers, why we're thinking that this hackathon is a success is that it fulfilled the objectives that we had. In a nutshell, we had two main objectives. One was to educate and upskill our thousands of Capgemini employees globally on the latest Gen AI tools. And the second big objective was to create a series of solutions on Gen AI for our consultants to be able to actually walk the talk for a very discrete number of industry, which are financial services, energy, automotive, and aerospace and defense. And when I look at those big two goals, I can see that we've been able to achieve the increase of the pool of talents. We actually added about 2,000 Gen AI badges as part of that endeavor. That places us, we were already trending well with AWS in terms of partners with the most Gen AI badges, but that solidify our top position there. We were also able to harvest a lot of use cases and solutions for this hackathon. We had asked our industry leaders to prioritize 4 different use cases for their industry and add, so basically 4 industry, 4 use cases. You can do the math, 16 use cases, and only 2, I think, were not selected. So we were able, we have now a series of MVPs for a lot of different use cases that are a priority for our industry leaders. And last but not least, we were able to now feature one of the winner, actually the winner of the overall hackathon at the reInvent show that will start in December. And then basically, if I were to summarize, I just received recently a unsolicited emails from one of the hackathon participants that were thanking me for creating this atmosphere of innovation. And I think that speaks for itself in terms of the success of this hackathon.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all that, Genevieve. On the upskilling piece, I just wanted to expand on that further. Before the hackathon, what were some of the challenges that you and your team had experienced in terms of getting training badges completed? Because 2,000 was a very high number, but what were some of the numbers that you saw before in the months before the hackathon?
Yeah, for sure. I think when you think about Gen AI, you don't necessarily think immediately about AWS. So before the hackathon, we were basically having to compete with other hyperscalers solution and people getting more excited maybe in terms of getting upskilled on this other hyperscalers, especially because it is so easy to leverage other LLMs, even with a different hyperscaler infrastructure. So it was very important for us to create a dynamic of getting people to get to experience the technology and do it fast so we can catch up with the other teams. And today, even if we started later in terms of training people on Gen AI AWS solution, within the company, we really catch up to the other hyperscaler and actually are ahead now.
Amazing. And on that training piece, I just wanted to pass it to Nico and Venki on this particular part. But what did you see in particular about this hackathon that you saw differently when it came to upskilling employees?
I think traditionally the numbers are more or less constant and a steady pace in terms of badges and things like that. It also depends on the services that are being used. However, you may guess that using in generative AI, the numbers of badges are a little larger because everybody into Gen AI today. But specifically when such training happens, like with Genevieve, we did a hackathon, the badges number are significantly higher, and that's was reflected in well, we got almost 2,000 badges in a very short period of time.
Amazing. And Venki, do you have any hypotheses on why that was the case?
Yeah, so a couple of things. I think we actually engaged with Capgemini earlier this year, and we did run some of the training programs. But what's different in this particular hackathon is we created a prerequisite curriculum wherein we identified certain courses and made it mandatory for them to do the badges. As a result, we have seen a very big uptake, at least three-digit percentage increases month over month on the key services that we support from the AWS perspective. That kind of shows you the interest the participants had and also the commitment for them to complete the courses. So that I would see as a key identifier for the growth.
Amazing. Nice. Now I want to turn on to speaking about the hackathon solutions themselves. And I think, Genevieve, you mentioned that one of the teams is actually going to be featured at reInvent. But kind of before we even go into the hackathon solutions, the ones that came out, and then also the top 8 or 9 that we had for finalists. But I wanted to ask you, what was kind of your selection process in identifying those priority industries that you mentioned for this hackathon?
Sure. It's not my first global hackathon of this scale, and basically I learned some lessons from the first one. The first hackathon that I ran was a little bit more open. Hackers teams could actually select and pitch their own use cases. And as a result, I felt that most of the solutions were dominated by what I would say agentic AI, conversational AI chatbots solutions or document search, and very concentrated in some of the typical industries such as retail. So I really wanted to be able to basically address all of the priority industries that we have with AWS, which are the ones that I cited: FS, automotive, aerospace and defense, and energy. So we made the choice to be a little bit more targeted on those industries. We also worked with the industry leaders to clarify what were the use cases that were important for those industries and those clients. So the outputs as a result of the solutions are much more usable. And that was the key feedback of the judges that we had. Those judges were the same industry leaders that make the choices around the use case. And they're now working with some of the, not even just the winners of the hackathon, but basically the series of solutions that have been harvested for their specific industries to now develop like a catalog of solutions. So to me, that was a big improvement compared to my first hackathon. The second thing that I can think about is that we also work with those industry leaders to clarify what their target clients are. And that helped a lot I believe, the hackathon team to be much more targeted towards solutions that can address those specific clients. So today, I think we will have, and in the future, we'll have a catalog of very solid solutions that we can draw from this hackathon.
Amazing. And passing to Nico and Venki, who are mentors as well as planning organizers from the AWS side for this hackathon. But what stood out in particular to you when you saw some of these hackathon solutions, either in first round or the top finalists that we had?
So it is the completeness and thoroughness and specificity of the solutions in addressing the challenges of the customers. As Genevieve was mentioning, the use cases were very well thought out, trying to address the specific challenges in those particular industries. And those are not trivial use cases, right? Wherein you use the chatbots or the regular rack kind of solutions. So this really required them to dig deeper into understanding the problem and then using generative AI tools to solve them. So as a result, what we saw was usually most of the time we see as a part of the hackathons, they will create a new model and they'll show you like in a console and everything. But what we saw in this case was a fully packaged solution, including a front end. So it was ready to kind of showcase it to the customers. And that kind of was the completely different one we have observed in this particular hackathon. So that's a very success. And also the support from Genevieve, making sure that we focus on the right use cases and industries.
Yeah, just to add to that, what Venki and Genevieve was saying, non-trivial problems require non-trivial solution, right? And as a result, for example, myself as a mentor, I was challenged by in-depth questions from participants because they had to solve these challenging problems. And in multiple cases, we had to bring subject matter experts from AWS on particular services in generative AI space, specialists to help them to solve these problems. And that was the key. For example, with multiple teams, I specifically spent more than 2 hours a day helping in solving them technical challenges. And of course, by this help to enable them on AWS generative AI services as well. Yeah.
Okay. And on the pod, that's what's happening next for these top priority industry solutions. Genevieve, could you share a little bit more about both for the winning solution that's being featured at reInvent and some of the other use cases across the industries?
Yeah, the process for what's happening next is really to create this catalog of solutions by use cases and by industry. So right now, each of those teams, industry teams, are reviewing the outputs and selecting which are the ones that they're going to push as demonstrator for our client pitches. We also have some of the use cases and solutions that can be used from a cross-industry perspective. So I also have more of our domain leaders around engineering, around data and AI, looking also at the outputs to see how they can build their catalog irrespective of the industry. And that's a tool that all of my sellers are actually asking for in order to be competitive in the market. Back to what Venki said, the outputs on some of the solutions were so impressive, especially the champion, that today we will be able to feature them at reInvent with just a few weeks of lead time, right, to push that solutions into a client-ready demo for reInvent. So that, to me, that speaks to the testament of how well that those teams thought through their solutions and how reusable it is to move forward and to have something that is client ready.
I love that, Genevieve. And actually want to ask on that thread is what have you seen typically to get to, and how long would it typically take to get a solution to that moment? And especially when we think about the scale of how many solutions we were able to get through the hackathon, how does that typically look, and how did you see the hackathon kind of accelerate that process?
Yeah, without a hackathon and having such a critical mass to work in a different way at the same use case, we would have looked at months to create the same library, if not a year, right? From the time you define the use case to the time that you would have basically part-time people thinking about it as a side project, right? And having to develop that in addition to their client work or so on. The hackathon was really a catalyst to get to this result in, I don't know if people measure, but in 2 weeks, right? So this is an impressive accelerator for us to build assets, right? So that's why it was so important to calibrate it on the right use cases with people like Nico and Venki as mentors to make sure that those teams had the right tools in their hands to develop the solutions. And also I want to speak about the development time after post-hackathon, right? I have data sets from the first hackathon that I run that it took basically just a few weeks for our cloud COE to transform a MVP from the hackathon into a workable solution, right? So I don't have, I cannot tell you if it takes 2 weeks or a month. It depends on the complexity of the solutions. But even that time to get something that is client ready was shortened as well as part of this hackathon process.
Amazing. That's really great to know, that post-innovation piece. On the tool specifically for this event, I just wanted to turn this to Nico and Venki. Do you have any insights on which particular models or tools were used and experimented with the most by participants?
Yeah, I think what we've seen is what made this possible to move faster is participants were using Amazon Bedrock, Amazon Q, Amazon SageMaker, of course. And for those that know, Amazon Bedrock is a fully managed service that offers the choice of financial models, or FMs as we call them, from AI companies like AI21 Labs, Anthropic, Cohere, Meta, Stability, and of course Amazon. And your conversation with LLM or FM is just a single API away. And with a lot of capabilities, it's easy to start building generative applications, simplifying the development, of course, easy to experiment. And that's why the participants were able to move quickly. You can also customize your models and using fine-tuning and, of course, for those that are familiar, retrieval augmented generation, or RAG, for example. And maybe, Venki, you can expand on Amazon Q.
Yeah. So when we looked at the personas participating in the hackathon, we identified the major portion are the developers, right? Who are kind of leaning towards Amazon Bedrock, using the APIs and building their applications. However, there were people like data scientists that wanted a little bit deeper. So they learned the SageMaker and learned to apply our Trainium and Inferentia chips at the hardware level to go deeper into training the models and coming up with that. And then there was this other group, which is the business users, who may not have so much of technical, but they use this Amazon Q. It's AI-powered assistance from AWS, and it sits across multiple services. So it's in the console, helping developers to kind of troubleshoot the problem or recommend the solutions. And it's on the developer platforms and IDEs where you can actually request it to code, create test cases, test the application itself, and also upgrade the applications. And it also sits on the analyst. For the analyst, sits on QuickSight, where they can give NLP queries to build the visuals or to understand the data. And in addition, Amazon Q also sits in the Connect platform, where the agent is guided from the knowledge base that it has access to. So that way they can answer the questions quickly to the callers and make a resolution faster. So as a result, Amazon Q was the biggest interest among these other persona of people, and we saw a lot of uptick in the training and growth as well.
Amazing. Diving into the planning process, as this whole team was also involved in the hackathon planning process, which was about 6 to 8 weeks ahead of the hackathon. I know something that stuck out to me. I know Venki and Nico, there was some skepticism about bringing in an external sort of like hackathon partner, and especially as AWS probably have run many hackathons in the past. But you talked about there was kind of a moment where it sort of clicked, and there was a bit of a magic moment for the two of you early in the process. I was just curious, when was that moment, and what really kind of made this hackathon sort of unique compared to some of the other hackathons that you've participated or run?
So one of the things we have done for the hackathons, I think Capgemini as a partner and with AWS, we ran the hackathons, right? We did the heavy lifting, everything from planning, organizing, technical enablement, and from Capgemini perspective, bringing the folks, making them participate and work through that. So what differentiated this particular hackathon is that when Onova took over the undifferentiated heavy lifting of kind of coordinating with everyone, while we at AWS, we focused on training the resources on technical skills and AWS resources, while Capgemini focused on, making sure they have their, the industry leads, creating those use cases and bringing people registering for the hackathon. We were able to kind of focus what we do best. And while Onova did an excellent job of making sure that we have everything to create a finalized core product, including the workshops and other additional things that that hackers need to create a complete product. Nico, you have something to add?
I just want to say at AWS we will have to say we need the right tool for the job, and Onova did exactly that, right? As Venki was mentioning, the heavy lifting was taken away from us, and we could focus on enabling, helping the technical issues, running the technical workshops for participants. Onova was helping facilitate everything, bringing the right workshops, for example, for UI UX or pitching like a pro. Right? These were very important, and Onova helped with that a lot.
Appreciate the kind words, and I think Venki, what you really kind of nailed is that I think it allowed each partner to really focus on their core competencies, and especially when doing something at this scale, with over thousands of participants, really can kind of blow up in scope sometimes. But yeah, thanks for sharing.
Amazing. And kind of speaking on this partnership stuff, this aspect, I wanted to kind of touch on, I think this hackathon has been in the works for a while, but I wanted to pass back to Genevieve as well to kind of mention and talk about this particular partnership that you had with AWS to bring this hackathon to life.
Yeah, and I think I can only second what Venki said. I think what was so different, first to answer the previous question about this hackathon, I want to answer in three ways. One is the scale and the design of the hackathon. We're talking not about a 3-day affairs. We're talking about a 2 weeks where we have to keep people motivated, interested, and not dropping out. And I think if Onova wants to share the stats, the attrition rate is much higher than what we see publicly in other hackathon, right? So the scale and the complexity that had to be managed there was much higher than a typical hackathon. I think Onova has the right methodology, the right approach to basically help to retain as many hackers as possible, have them be ready to pitch and to prepare their solution in the best way possible. And that is not a skill that we had internally to drive. And I think the third differentiator was really to partner with our industry lead at Capgemini. They were from the use case definition all the way to the judging side that allows them to have really a view into what was developed, how they can shape it to leverage it for their clients, and feel really involved into the solutions that ultimately were developed through this hackathon. And that would not have been possible without the partnership that we have with AWS. Back to what Victor shared, it was not evident. It was evident for me that we needed Onova to help us, but it was not necessarily evident to AWS. They had not experienced a hackathon with you guys. And it's because we trust each other, because we have the ability to make those investments together in creative thinking and in different way of running a hackathon, that they gave me the opportunity to convince them that that was the right way to proceed. And that's thanks to our very trusted partnership together.
Amazing. And yeah, I think, oh, sorry, Nico, were you gonna, just, yeah, I think building off of that, and I know Genevieve talking about some of those conversion and attrition, and I think especially when you're talking about a virtual hackathon, and we've got 2 weeks, and I don't think we mentioned, but basically all the participants were doing this on top of their day jobs. So it wasn't like we had 1,600 people step away from their day jobs. So everyone's balancing 40+ hour work week. And typically industry average, we're seeing, at least with the hackathons that we're running, 2 to 3 times higher conversion and follow through from registration to completion. And we really try to put a lot of energy and care into the workshops, and ensuring that participants are prepared as possible to really make it to that finish line. So yeah, I think that's a fantastic call out. Were there any particular stats that you were each in particular most proud of? I know that from seeing the solutions to training, but yeah, we'll kind of open that to anyone to jump in about the proudest moments.
Yeah, I think overall, the number of participants, we were able to achieve our reach, the number of GenAI badges, the attrition rates between the number of team that was constituted all the way to the submission. For me, those are the proudest stats that I've noticed.
If I may add, I know maybe it's a not so much measurable metric, but specifically, I was very impressed by the quality of the pitch that the participants delivered. The pitches were very impressive, and given the time frame that they had, only a few days to create, and the pitches were very short, under 3 minutes. But if you look at them, it's a high bar pitches that were created in a very short period of time, and I particularly was very impressed by that when I saw the final round solutions that were presented.
Venki, did you want to share a moment?
No, I think both Genevieve and Nico covered most of the aspects. I mean, it's just a scale. I think this is at least from Nico and I perspective, we are completely dedicated to Capgemini. This is the first time we have seen this much of scale on the hackathon, and also the quality, right? I mean, you can't put a number to the quality, but the quality of the solutions was impressive as well.
Nice. I just wanted to kind of share a fun story from the hackathon. So it's funny that Nico mentioned pitching because Nico was at our Pitch Like a Pro workshop, and at one point he actually pitched a mug to participants. So he really sold us on this concept of a ceramic mug. So he was our volunteer for the workshop activity that we had. But I just kind of like on that note of kind of a fun memory. Hopefully that was a fun memory for you, Nico, looking back. But I wanted to ask the rest of our planning committee, what was a highlight for you during the planning process? It could be during the hackathon or even in the moments planning the event in the early months that we had, as well as a challenge. So a fun memory that sticks out as well as a challenging moment.
Well, next time, Ron, please let me know ahead of time because I was caught off guard. But I think I nailed it. I don't know. For me, that was the fun moment. I guess nobody wanted to volunteer, and you kind of voluntold me. So it was fun. I learned a lot from the Pitch Like a Pro workshop itself. So I guess that helped me to, speak back to the participants and sell my ceramic mug.
I was on Amazon after that call.
Yeah.
But what was a Vicky, for you, what was a fun moment that you had?
I think it was prior to the event itself, the planning, right? When Genevieve early this year mentioned that she wanted to run a hackathon, I was kind of internally, Nico and I were trying to figure out a mechanism to support that, but out of the box, there was no. I mean, AWS has a lot of programs for partners, supporting the partners, funding the partners. But we couldn't figure out a mechanism to kind of support this hackathon. But then we made a business case, and Genevieve, pushed it from our side. And as a result, we were able to make it happen. I think that for me is an interesting moment where we thought may not be possible, but then it happened in the end. I think that I fondly remember that moment for me.
Nice. And Genevieve?
Yeah, I don't know if I can top the fun moment of Nico having to sell a mug to to a group of attendees. But my most memorable moment was really during the last judging round and seeing all of those pitches, and especially when the judge now have to deliberate and seeing how my ratings were very different from the others. And I always come from more of a business angle, and then I'm always confronted to the feasibility of things, right? So it's interesting to see the debate between creativity and feasibility. The most challenging side that I had totally overlooked is that I knew that September was the right time frame to run this hackathon, but I didn't factor in that in order to prep for the hackathon, it will be during the summer months. And that was a big challenge to be ready on time, especially with a lot of our industry leaders being away to capture those use cases by the time we wanted to launch the hackathon. So that was definitely something that maybe did not keep me awake at night, but definitely was a challenge to overcome.
Thanks for sharing, everyone. And speaking of use cases, Genevieve, actually, there's a question here in the chat from Kate. So, what were some of the most interesting Gen AI use cases that you saw emerging from the hackathon, and especially as you saw come to fruition through the judging?
Yeah, I think for me is the one we're gonna feature at reInvent, which was around the ability of using Gen AI to monitor vegetation growth around power lines. That's more than I think the use cases is what it is, but the solutions and how they we did not provide any data sets to the individual, so how resourceful that team came along in order to not only create a good product, but back to what Venki said, also look at the AI. So people like me who are more on the business side would be impressed by how to use that solution without being too much on the technical side of how to run that solution. I think also in the financial service industry, I definitely want to get a hold of some of the solutions that look after how to basically automate trading advice, I want to say. I'd love to be able to to know how to place my money in a better way. So some of those solutions that attack the use case around how to leverage the a massive amount of data around stocks and basically provide better brokerage advice is definitely one that resonated with me. So those were maybe the two that I liked the most. I don't know, Venki or Nico, did you guys had a favorite or a set of favorites?
I can talk about one. There was this regulatory compliance solution that was developed, which essentially, depending on the country, it can generate the vehicle report to comply with the regulations of that country. I thought that was very interesting because they pulled, imagine pulling the regulations across the various countries and also trying to figure out the automaker's spec sheet to see how many of them are complying, how many tests have to be done. So I thought that was a very interesting use case that was presented to me. Nico?
Yeah, I actually was impressed by the same one because I'm a lot into security. My specialty in security at AWS with Capgemini. So I really love that one as well. Yeah, compliance is very important, and we're seeing a lot of generative AI use cases emerging for generative AI for security or security of generative AI. So that one was stood out for me as well.
Love it. And there's another question, but more of a comment from John in the Q&A, who was a mentor during the hackathon. Actually, John, I'll invite you to chat if you can. Otherwise, I'll read it out for you. But do you want to come off mute and actually share your comment as a mentor?
Yeah, I do. So thanks for taking me off mute. And just as a quick piece of commentary, I was a participant and an ultimate winner in the Azure Hackathon and was invited by this crew to be a mentor in the AWS Hackathon. And I was like, what? Why are you inviting a Microsoft guy to an AWS Hackathon? But it turned out that it was really rewarding and really helpful to kind of guide others to kind of refine their ideas, ideate through their ideas, regardless of the platform and the technology space. It was really interesting and eye-opening to get people and help people kind of think through what they were ideating and solutioning and implementing and then testing. So that was really useful. The one comment I'll make is that as a mentor, there was often some times that the teams were kind of all one persona. And I think part of that comes back to how we've targeted some of the audience there. So if I can offer any one suggestion is that for whatever vNext is really think through who we're targeting to invite, because I think there's a use case and a pretty compelling one to have a bunch of different personas to really build some amazing solutions outside of just a developer focus. Even though it's a hackathon, this is sort of more like a design jam, and it could really warrant some of those different mindsets and hats that people are wearing.
Fantastic feedback, John. And I think especially with where AI is now and really empowering people to get from like zero to actually solution and faster than ever, it's not just about having the developers, but really empowering even many non-developers too.
Totally.
And I know Genevieve, we had chatted a bit about activating some of those other groups more so across Capgemini as well in the future. Um, Appreciate it, John. Thanks for the feedback. And see you at the next.
Indeed.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, I totally agree with your feedback, John. We do want to have more roles. In this case, I think a challenge created an opportunity for actually developers to take a role more on the business and on the strategy side. So it was also interesting to see that muscle being flexed in people that may not, it may not be their day-to-day job, but absolutely one of the area where we want to grow more is to have more of the other business line, such as the strategist consultant within Capgemini, the engineering consultant as well, that have participated, but not as much as we would have wanted for.
And there's one more question in the Q&A here. So, are these hackathon projects published online? Right now, they are not published publicly, but we will be, I mean, as Genevieve has mentioned, some of them will be showcased publicly at events like AWS reInvent. But I mean, we'll kind of toss to our partners here. And this kind of really blends into what's happening next. I know we talked a little bit about what's happening next in terms of, showcasing some of these solutions, taking them through to fruition. But maybe Genevieve, you want to touch on any plans to hopefully eventually publish these and what's happening next with this hackathon, but also future plans for 2025.
Yeah, I think what will be ultimately published is a summary of our catalog of solutions that we'll have by industry. And that will be, to some extent, as long as we don't reveal much of the IP, will be a teaser on each of the solutions that we believe we will have as client ready. As for 2025, I definitely think that is an activity that we should run on a yearly basis, that now we can take in a lot of different ways. Do it right now. AWS was basically assisting us in training our people or providing technical know-how, but we can definitely envision having hackathon teams that are both on the Capgemini and on the AWS side. We can take it also to clients, which is something that Onova also has done before, and I've already received some interest to do so. We can focus on a different set of industries that we had to that we didn't prioritize to this round. So whatever I want to say, whatever the gaps that we identify in 2025 that we want to shore up, I am also almost certain that some new technology will be released by AWS in that space, since it's going so fast that upskilling our teams on those new technology will be a must. So there's a lot of different ways that we can take it next year to keep it fresh, keep it interesting, but continue to basically put on hyperdrive our innovation capacity.
Amazing. It's great that there's so many ideas to how this particular hackathon can be improved moving forward in future. All the ways, like whether it's different industries, that it can be better for 2025 and beyond. One quick thing that I just wanted to ask the group, when it comes to planning your first hackathon together, what are some core things that people should be thinking about, having discussions around when planning such a large scale event? So I'll pass to both Nico and Venki first from AWS and then to Genevieve.
I think from my point of view, identifying the leadership support stakeholders, industry SMEs that will drive the solutions, and identifying those use cases is the key success for the program. I think we didn't mention that, but having Genevieve done already some other hackathons with other hyperscalers, right, was super helpful. Genevieve knew exactly what she wanted from this hackathon. Genevieve knew exactly what are the use cases, who are the SMEs will be there, and I think without Genevieve's support, I don't think that will be successful. So I just want to give a shout out to Genevieve for standing her ground on the things that she wanted, and that's why it was made a success. So having leadership support is very important. Although of course Onova did an awesome job, but I want just to highlight Genevieve's support. So yeah, thank you, Genevieve.
And Venki?
Yeah, I think the scope is very critical, right? Upfront, I know we had conversations with Genevieve, and she was kind of set on the industry, set on the use cases. That kind of helped to kind of structure the entire program around it, and everybody's focus was around that. And getting that key stakeholder in the partner, and on our side, our AWS leaders, getting that support on both sides, making sure that we are all on the same page, we are also focused on the same outcome, was critical. At the same time, a partner like Onova, making sure that we keep our sides of the commitments and hitting the dates, I think that kind of helped us push this hackathon forward, because it was running like a well-oiled machine wherein the key dates were there, we were meeting, we always said, okay, it's done. And that kind of helped strategize and keep our foot to the ground and work through the hackathon. I think those are the three keys, right? Leadership support on all partners, and also making sure a partner is there to help us with keeping the dates in line. And the third is making sure the scope is all tightened up and there's a well-structured program in place for the hackathon. Those are the three factors I feel like is critical.
Amazing. And Genevieve?
First of all, I want to say thank you because I enjoy so much designing and running this hackathon with all of you here on this panel. I want to say again on the fact of how important it is to spend time in designing the hackathon, thinking of questions such as what are the target participants, what is the timing and duration, what are the goals you want to achieve, the use cases, what are going to be the mentors, the judges, and also something that we didn't touch around, but anything around the logistics, the environments to actually build the solutions was actually something that posed some challenge and that we had to resolve, right? So that design phase is absolutely important. I want to add another aspect which I've always been very mindful on when I create those type of events, is that of course I have some objectives, but I also want it to be an enjoyable experience for the hackathon people because I want them to come back over and over and not just have one hackathon, it's done. I extract the knowledge from them and then they left out of the process, right? So when Onova shared the stats also on the satisfaction of the individuals, how they enjoyed the process, what are the areas that we can improve, but what are the areas that we also nailed. I think it's super important to create also a hackathon that would make the hackers want to come over and over. And I think we achieved that.
Amazing. And that's exactly what's been happening as well. I mean, we've run now 3 hackathons in the span of probably 6-7 months this year on the Capgemini side, and many repeat hackers, and John, who everyone heard from earlier, coming back from hacker to mentor. Who knows, maybe judge in the future. But one last piece I want to ask this team before we kind of close out with final remarks is the way that everything pulled together for this was somewhat unique as well, in terms of the resourcing, the sort of the model around funding. And I know, without sharing maybe too much, just curious on some of those conversations that happened behind the scenes, and really being able to bring all the pieces together, and how that kind of looked like, and anything that this team can share from that unique model. Oh, Genevieve, I think you're on mute.
Sorry, I think back to what Venki shared, right? It was a different way to think about hackathon, right? We had early discussion this year where they were sharing their current process, and I pushed a little bit the boundaries. But what I appreciated is that we both allowed each other to be more creative, right? To think about first about what was the event we wanted to design, and then overcome any challenges around cost, around environment, and things like that together. So I think this creative spirit that started with the design of what really was the hackathon we wanted to go after, was seen throughout the process of making it happen, right? Then back to what he said, we created the business case together, and we tried to think creatively of how we can both get our organization to co-invest, and it was an unplanned expense, so it was definitely, we needed to put our creative mind to make it happen.
Yes, I guess the collaboration was the key, right, Genevieve? Where 3 of us were working, 3 organizations, Onova, AWS, and Capgemini, worked together, open-minded, and were creative, as we mentioned, to make this happen. So yeah, totally thumbs up on this.
Amazing. Before we close out and I pass off to Victor, actually, Venki, did you want to add to that, or is there anything?
No, I think that's when we see this kind of outcomes, right? It is worth it to pursue it, and that's one of the reasons, like AWS and Capgemini, we trust each other, making sure that we support each other as well. And we are, like Nico and I, are completely dedicated to Capgemini, and we support the customers. So we were able to make a very good business case to say, yeah, there will be a good outcome, and Capgemini is our Gen AI excellence partner, and those are the things, some of the supporting evidence that helped us to kind of push forward on this one.
Awesome. Before we close out and I pass off to Victor for some final call to actions, I just wanted to give a huge thanks to Genevieve, Nico, and Venki, not only for your time today to be featured as part of this webinar, but throughout this whole process for the hackathon. So not just during the whole 2 weeks, we were engaged up to our very final session for final round judging, but throughout the entire planning process, where there was the weekly project calls that we had, meeting up, discussing around provisioning the tools, even just working offline, making sure, I know that Genevieve had the very tough job over the summer of collecting all the use cases, recruiting the judges. So just wanted to give a huge thanks to you for making this hackathon a great success.
And I echo those sentiments. Just thank you so much to this entire team. And sorry, Venki, I actually saw you were about to come off mute. Were you gonna say something?
No, I just wanted to thank all of you for kind of supporting us and working through this. I really appreciate it, and it was a very great experience for me as well.
Amazing. Honestly, it was a lot of fun. So of course, apart from all the business objectives and ROI, it's just a lot of fun putting on events like this and working with fantastic partners like AWS and Capgemini. And we've got a lot more in store in the future. So Really, as we close out here, I'm just dropping the emails, but welcome you all. If you want to continue this conversation, feel free to reach out to any of our panelists via email or add them on LinkedIn. And if you're looking to and wanting to activate sort of the many partners across this Gen AI stack and talk about even doing a hackathon of your own and how you can bring in partners like AWS that have all the cloud and tech and compute resources, the implementation partner with Capgemini to actually build many of those solutions and take them through to production. And then Onova to help actually just facilitate that process of the hackathon and getting all those solutions built. Then definitely reach out to Ron or I. You can find us on LinkedIn, and of course email. Just dropping that here in the chat as well. But thanks for joining us for this hour. We'll close out here if no more questions, and hope to see you all at the next one.